On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Mukta Nandwani. She is the CTO at Findhelp. We're going to be talking about the role of technology in social care. So we're going to be talking about the state of the industry when it comes to technology, some of the unique constraints that social care tech has to deal with. What does adoption look like? Advanced technologies. We'll see how much we can get in there with Mukta. Thanks for joining the podcast.
Excited to be here.
All right. So you're the CTO of Findhelp. Tell us what Findhelp does.
So we're a technology company. We create solutions to connect people in need with social care services in their areas.
All right. Okay. So just to kind of set the stage, obviously social care tech is critically important. Help us understand a little bit before we dive into the role of technology in social care. Just maybe the highlight of what does technology, what is the current state within social care tech? Because a lot of people may not be familiar. I think it'd be a good starting point.
Yeah, I think it varies. People talk about social care in different ways. It means different things to different people. There's certainly areas like, where social care interacts or overlaps with healthcare, where the state of technology looks quite a bit different than the state of technology at your CBOs or community-based organizations who may be, small, grant-funded and focused on providing specific care or specific services. So there's a wide variety in terms of technical maturity and availability of solutions across the spectrum.
I guess when it comes to, and again, it's good to kind of look at, there's health tech, and I think a lot of people are familiar with it. They might interact with it on a daily basis because they have health needs, or they will come touch. It's almost impossible not to. When it comes to social care technology, does that hurt a little bit in the industry? Because maybe when we do interact with social care, it's not frequent enough. It's not something consistent for us to really understand the problem space. Does that come into play when you compare it to maybe like you said, health tech and other similar industries?
I don't think so. I think that people conflate social care a little bit with healthcare just because that is the path through which we most commonly experience social care needs. And that is sort of in some ways the most mature understanding of social care. It's definitely an evolving area. It is definitely a maturing area, but every need, every facet or context or industry has a slightly different sort of level of understanding and as well as need for social care tech. If that answers your question.
No, that does. It's interesting because I think I do see a lot of people not seeing the clear delineation, right? It's not quite clear. I guess I'd Findhelp, and if you're looking at, again, industry-wide social care tech, help us understand some of the unique constraints that you deal with that maybe are not found in other industries.
One of the things to recognize, and I come from a health tech background, so in a lot of ways, my thinking was about providing clinical care, whether that be in the hospital or a clinic or at home or, whatever it might be. Social care affects multiple facets of society, and people need to access or be able to access social care in those contexts. So an example, outside of your typical clinical healthcare might be foster care placement or assistance with, reentry as a post-incarceration program, or, housing needs. Some of those surface in healthcare contexts, but many of those don't. So what I see as the basic challenge or the thing we strive for as we think about social care technology is access and accessibility. People should be able to access the technology when they need it, where they need it, and how they need it. So that might be as part of helping somebody with a substance abuse problem or foster care placement. or a housing need or food insecurity and a food pantry. And it may be in a situation where the person doesn't have a device to work with. It may be somebody who's striving to find care for their child or their friend, and maybe they don't have, the best internet connection. Maybe they don't have, your powerful laptop. And so when we think about access, we're thinking about modalities, and we're thinking about how people can reach technology in many different ways. So, for example, we have Findhelp as an application in kiosks that are installed in New York City, which is very different than, having your web browser that you can access through your own laptop. The other thought that needs to be really front and center is accessibility. So you may be working with people who have language barriers, for example, or they are just not technology savvy. How do you make it intuitive for them to get to where they need and not create so many barriers to entry? And then the third thing, which is more on us as we think about creating, technology that will serve this need, will serve the social care need, is to think about privacy. And we often at Findhelp will talk about the dignity of the seeker or the person in need. Are we respecting their dignity? Because a lot of these things are sensitive. And we want to make sure that the individual is respected, right? And so we take an approach of making sure that we have consent. We take the approach of making sure that data is not, sold or shared in any inappropriate ways. And so, yes, we talk a lot about privacy, and there's a lot of regulation and all of that around that in the healthcare industry. But I think with social care, there's like a humanity, there's a dignity of a human being that is our responsibility to respect.
I guess, when I'm listening to you speak about the accessibility, I was thinking about the friction of actually accessing whatever's necessary at the time. And maybe it's not a technological solution. Maybe it is a paper-based solution. Maybe it's field-based, whatever it is. It definitely represents obstacles to collecting that data, bringing it back into the system. Different organizations will have different levels of sophistication. I'm sure the larger social care orgs, they have very sophisticated technologies to handle this. But as we go lower and lower, smaller and smaller, I think it'd be very interesting. When it comes to that friction piece, and you're thinking about technology solutions, and obviously you have a health tech background, so I'm kind of curious, like how do you start thinking about re-envisioning delivering that last mile? Because obviously you might have the most elaborate solution, but if that last mile doesn't meet your customers where they're at, that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, I think the thing we think a lot about is simplicity of use. We want to make it really easy, really straightforward, lower the barrier of entry, and then be able to build from there. So, you may be an organization that is, fairly mature and advanced in the data that you need to collect or the information you need to collect or your payment models and reimbursement models and all of that. We want you to have that ability, and we make those options available to you. But if you're not, if what you need is to simply upload a document and take a picture of a form that is filled out and upload, then we support that as well. So it's about options, and it's about working with our customers and folks utilizing our software to make sure that they are utilizing the best option available to them and are not thwarted, we are not introducing unnecessary friction.
I guess as you're thinking about, you mentioned language, obviously, and I start thinking about, well, we have tools out there that do such a great job with language, but obviously some of these are more advanced technologies. Obviously, I'm talking about potentially using a generative AI solution. When you're thinking about technologies, and obviously you have a health tech background, you have a lot of tools you can pull out from your toolbox, and tons that are emerging. When it comes to taking advantage of some of these solutions, I keep kind of going back and saying, well, if somebody doesn't have access to a computer, even if I have the most sophisticated LLMs that I'm leveraging and I can't translate this document, this form for them because they're just not there, does it really help? And I was thinking about, obviously, some of the solutions that you might start seeing in the field. We're seeing mobile products be able to do language translation real time, going back and forth. As you're starting to think of just technology and helping the field, that last mile in adoption, is it a case of thinking small and thinking out with it? Is it a case of, hey, we have some bigger plans, we just have to kind of find a way through? I mean, how do you work on that adoption piece?
Yeah, and it's a little bit of a technology problem and a little bit of a people challenge too, right? It is the last mile will be, I think, high touch no matter what, right? And bringing technology to people, one of the ways that we think about our reach is through community health workers or through care managers, where there is somebody who has a trust relationship or can build a trust relationship with the person in need and can navigate and help on their behalf. That said, it is really exciting to have technologies like generative AI. How do we make that cost effective? How do we do it in a way that continues to respect the, privacy and the dignity of the person, but really tune into, where things like translation can help? Where can we talk in the language of that trusted relationship? And those are things that we are exploring right now, sort of more incubation style, to think about where we could take this in a real meaningful way that would make an impact, as opposed to using cool technology for the sake of cool technology.
That's fair. I mean, if you're still collecting field data through manual means, obviously you have some other obstacles of dealing with that before you even worry about that. What is cool, what's not cool. When it comes to, I guess, just out of curiosity, your team and working within social care tech, is there an adjustment in working within some of these dynamics? Because if I'm an engineer or I'm a data person or I'm somebody in technology that's worked at other companies, there seems to be some very unique challenges as you kind of envision a technology solution and want to roll it out versus others. Is there a ramp up time? How have you seen that kind of unfold?
A little bit. I think the understanding the domain is difficult, and it takes time and it takes experience. But in the end, like for an engineer who's writing software is software, right? So what we try to do is we try to find ways in which we're providing that broader context to our engineers so that they can quickly come up to speed on the domain, so that the solutions that we're creating are actually useful in the context. But that notion isn't all that unique to software, right? You have a user base, you have a domain, you need to have some understanding of the domain if you're going to develop good software. I think social care is just inherently complex, and it takes a little bit more time, it takes a little bit more immersing into it, it takes shadowing users, it takes understanding, talking to people to really develop an internal compass, in addition to what things like research, etc., might inform.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I don't think anyone. I mean, there's not a more important product to be around, when it comes to social. I mean, it impacts so many people. I do appreciate you coming on, telling us about what you guys do. And if somebody wants to reach out to you to talk to you about Findhelp or just a little bit more about how social care tech works, what's a good way of connecting with you?
I am available on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from your listeners. I'd love this topic, and I'm happy to engage and answer questions or just chat and think through ideas.
Absolutely. Well, we'll make sure to include your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. Again, thanks for being on, Mukta, to chat with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. That's it for the episode. We'll be back again. Different guest, different topic. Until then, I think this discussion around social care tech is great. I haven't been exposed to a ton. I know a lot about health tech, a little bit less about social care tech, some unique challenges, some unique opportunities. And it's not always the cool piece of tech that Mukta and her team's looking at. It's a lot about that last mile and meeting the users where they're at, which I think is awesome. So please share this episode with somebody else who might find the subject interesting. Also, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the podcast is doing for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.